In the 1930s in Germany, which was a small country then, still is, Adolf Hitler took power, sort of by a fluke. Now, we've seen many different interpretations of this on History Channel things in our books and whatnot, but we pretty much get the gist of it. He was a crazy son of a bitch, and he took over power, confused people, including the public, and used his mastermind to create tanks, bombs, missiles, you name it. Even stuff we use today, which is really weird. No pun intended. Nonetheless, it was a very, very difficult period for this planet. Difficult time for these people. You can kind of relate to that, or can you? Not. I don't know. Anyways, it was a world war. Now, I know you know that, but have you ever thought, like, the whole world at war? This makes no sense. The whole world is at war. I mean, in America, every single man that was over the age of 17 volunteered to the army, military. Like, they were gone, like every guy. No women were here. And the guys that were here, guess what they did? Yeah, exactly. Scandalous, motherfuckers. Scandalous. So, Rivet or Rosie, the women were working and building bombers. They built most of those aircraft. They built all that stuff. And of course, some guys had to stay here to run the shop, but, I mean, that's kind of crazy when you think about it. And they weren't alone. Even in the countries that were invaded, the military may have bounced and gone to Switzerland. But the people that were there, cookers, bakers, housewives, were having, like, grenades in their hands now and rifles and learning to be snipers. Russia, this is where the big women's movement really jumped off. They didn't give much credit to the women, but they did some. In fact, I believe in Poland, it was a female fighter who won one of the biggest awards given by England to another country, or their soldiers, and that was when she was a freedom fighter. And I mean, these women were hardcore, and they weren't like, crazy, psychotic, like bisexual, transsexual thing. These were women who were fighting for their country. Their husbands may have been dead, yes. Their kids were off to fight, or in a camp. And this was in every country. The only country that really wasn't affected in the sense of the country, meaning they weren't invaded, was the United States. There were other continents that were not invaded, but England almost got invaded. It was at the last minute that basically they held it together, and not many people know how they did that, because they were getting the Blitz all the time. Now, I'm going to share something with you guys. Hold on. I got a cold. If you read a lot of these things in ancient history and numerology and things like that, some people will say, don't fuck with that shit. Now, how does that happen? Someone perverts it or converts it. This is something Hitler did a lot of for his own agenda. Now, some may say, well, he did it for the Reich or for the Reich agenda. Yes, and people have said we're living in the Fourth Reich. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of the same. You know what I mean? Well, so if you accuse someone of being Hitler, and they're not killing millions and millions of Jews in front of your face, well, then they're not Hitler. In fact, even if they did do that, they could have done it over a long period of time. They could have stuffed them in ghettos or something like that, which they did do to the Russian Jews in Warsaw. I mean, something like 12,000 Russian Jews died in one of the last big battles before the Russian army jumped in. And they saw the civilians fighting the Nazi army. Think about that. Every day. And they didn't even jump in at the last minute. Something I always held against Russia. One of the only things I hold against Russia. Because they wanted to save their men. They knew that basically their people were going to get wasted away in battle, even though they were under the understanding that they were going to go in and help the civilians at the last end of the war. But instead they let the civilians fight it out to the last man. Then they jumped in and stomped out the Nazis and pushed them back into Germany from the east. The attack into Russia was known as Operation Barbarossa. And it was a very radical idea because at that time was basically immediately when they was going for England. So talk about getting egotistical and narcissistic. They went and tried to attack Russia, which was a powerhouse then, and England, which was a powerhouse then, and kind of attacking America, who was sending supplies to England, sinking our ships. They must have thought they had a bad ass, dude. I mean, we barely got into France on D-Day, and that took a few years to get there, and that was 50, 70 years ago. Now, I've read a lot of books, and I don't remember anyone telling me that Germany was invaded by the Russians. But that's kind of what some people are telling me these days. And this is what I'm talking about with what I call the, I don't know what to tell you, mind wipe. That's right. Now, some people know this, some people don't care. But when you see these mind wipes, they're frightening. I have witnessed this in a friend of mine, and it almost killed me, literally, without anyone touching me. It's funny how, they don't leave their fingerprints, do they? But my friend said they recognized the mark. Exactly.